Listeners, are you ready for a monthly literary adventure? Let me introduce you to the BFF Book Club. Join us each month to explore a new book across a wide variety of genres. After reading, connect with fellow book lovers and meet the author in a live Bookish Flights interview. Can't make the live? Don't worry, we'll send you the recording. Our September book club selection is Darkness Calls the Tiger by Janier Trump, which is a World War II historical fiction novel set in Burma. Head over to the link in our show notes to learn more and see our upcoming 2024 BFF Book Club selections. Listeners, can you believe it? Today is episode 100. Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Bethany House. We will be featuring a book flight of the Treasures of the Earth series by Kimberly Woodhouse. Stay tuned into the end to see how you can get a generous discount on these books. We have an extra special episode here for you today.
Hello, everyone. This is Jacqui Lents from Jacqui Just Chatters podcast. I'm not who you expected to hear right away, am I? That's because we're flipping things today. For Kara's 100th episode, I'm interviewing her. So today, our special guest is the talented, vivacious Kara Infante. Welcome to your own show, Kara.
Thank you so much, Jacqui. I knew as I was coming to episode 100 that I wanted to flip side of the mic, and you're the perfect guest host to have on the show. So listeners, make sure you head over to her podcast, Jacqui Just Chatters, and check it out because we have done a couple crossover projects together, and you're the perfect fit. So I'm glad to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. That's very kind. I have loved every crossover we've ever done. And I love every crossover we will do because I know they're all going to be fabulous.
Yes, absolutely. Listeners, podcasting can be sometimes a bit of a lonely road, right? Like you interview a
Oh, yeah.
guest and then you don't go talk to people when you edit and make content and push things out. It's a very solo venture. So I've been so thankful for our friendship that we have made over the course of our podcasting together because it's made it feel a little less lonely.
It has. It's been really wonderful because you're right. It is strangely isolating. Like, yes, you do interview the guests, but that's like such a small time compared to the hours you spend creating every episode. Like, listeners, unless you have one, you probably just don't understand. It's like when I was teaching, like people think, oh, I taught for an hour. That's all the time I know. Every lesson was hours and hours of
Yeah.
that just we make it look so effortless because we're so fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think I realized it was going to be like that when I was starting to podcast, and dreaming of this and what it was going to be. I don't think I realized how solo much of my time was going to be as well.
Probably best we didn't know any of those things because we might not have
Since I don't let this scare you if you want to start a podcast because it is a worthy venture. But just know that there's a lot of behind the scenes that go on as well.
or go in blind and stupid and then just figure it out and woohoo, now you're doing it.
Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes it's my philosophy.
Exactly. That is one of my things I've been, as I've been thinking about what I was going to say for this episode. And one of my mantras with this podcasting has been is like better done than perfect. Like just get it out there. I could mire myself in trying to make the perfect product or the perfect post or the perfect way I want to say this, but I would just never get anything out there. So better done than
Oh,
perfect just rattles around in my brain on a constant.
oh my gosh. Okay, because I suffer with perfectionism all the time. I have got to like make a little note of that and stick that up on my desk so I can look at that. Better done than perfect. I love it. That's fantastic. All right. We've got a whole list of questions, so we
Woohoo.
should get started. Our first one comes from the best book club podcast out there with the hosts Miranda, Jill, and Kelly. Hi, Gales. I follow you on Instagram. Love ya. The Bound Sisters. at Bound Sisters Podcast, and you talked to them in episode 86, and they have a question for you.
Okay.
How has doing a book-focused podcast changed and or helped your reading habits? Like, have you expanded your reading? Do you read less? Do you read more?
Yes, this is a great question because one of my whole reasons why I wanted to start a podcast about books. So, way back, we were living in Washington State at the time, and I had a friend, Ashley, down the street. She's actually been on the show as well. The fantasy episode, don't quote me, I think it's episode 4. But I was like, I really want to try reading fantasy books. I always say that I don't like fantasy, but all I've really read was like Harry Potter, right? And The Hobbit back in my school days. And I'm like, I can't say that I don't like fantasy if I've never really tried it. So I'd already had this idea of the podcast running through, but I'm like, what if I talk to people and they bring this book flight of 3 books to give us a sampling of the fantasy genre in this instance? And so that's really what the show started at. So, long story short, it has really expanded my reading horizons because I have made an effort, and I always had tried to make an effort of reading widely and not just sticking. Because let's be honest, I get bored if I stay in historical fiction all the time. I get bored of rom-coms. And this is nothing against them because I can go back and love them. But I do need to keep some variety in my reading life. But this has really made me intentional about trying thrillers that I never really read because I read at night and I don't want to have nightmares while I'm sleeping. I have read more fantasy and even rom-coms because I didn't always read rom-coms. So, yes, it has expanded my reading horizons. However, now I think I do. I've read more. Like I read 30 more books last year than I have, and I've been tracking on Goodreads for many years. So I have a list of books I've read. And so I can see, like, yeah, I read 30 more books last year. But I don't want to say that reading hasn't become like totally my own because now I'll try to read for if I have an author coming on the show, I'm trying to read all of their books or, what I can, especially if they have a big backlist, read their books before they come on the show. Or then people are telling me about books all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that has to skyrocket to the top of my TBR because that sounds amazing. And so I guess maybe I'd say it's become a bit more chaotic because now I'm throwing in like books for book club and book recommendations I've got and author interviews are coming up. And so it's probably just become more chaotic. Long story short.
I I know I'm not helping because I frequently am like, oh, you have to read this book.
I think I have an emotional support TBR list of I don't know. It's probably at 600 something now. And it just feels like this. I never will be at a shortage of a book to read because I have 600 books on a list to go to and figure out what I'm going to read next.
Do you even go a week without somebody recommending a book to you that you're like, well, especially because you do your podcast every
No,
week? I'm sure you've got,
no.
I've got another one for you in the
Woohoo.
book when we're done with the interview.
Yeah, tell me.
I've been binging it on audio, and it's another one of those feel good, awesome ones. So
I love those.
they're amazing. Okay, um, on to our next question that comes from the reading specialist Ashley Terpstra, who you talked to in episode 8 at Ashley Loves Literacy Littles. She is asking, what episode was your favorite?
I know. I had a really hard time with this when I was looking at this because I'm like, how can I pick just one episode that has been my favorite? But what I came to last night as I was, pondering over these questions was when I started this podcast, we all have our goals. And my dream guest was Kristen Hanna. And I'm going to tear up saying this that I can't believe I got to interview her. That feels like that was my bucket list person to have on the show. And I remember recording it and saying, if it ended tomorrow, I will have accomplished everything I wanted with this podcast.
Aww.
And because that to me, she's been my favorite author for many years and she's a master at what she does. And so, yeah. So if I had to pick a favorite, I mean, that just was a huge, felt like I was doing the right thing.
You got the gold medal in podcasting that day.
Yes, for me. And that's completely right. Your perspective is going to be different in who would be your bucket list person. But for me, that was like the pinnacle of what I wanted for the show.
Awesome. I was so glad for you when you told me that she was coming on. I'm like, oh my God. And it was fabulous. I'm so happy for you. All right, Ashley's got more questions.
Yeah.
Which episode inspired you the most?
So I had two as I was thinking about this. And shout out, Ashley did a Kristen Hanna book flight coming on the show. Um, so we talked about all Kristen Hanna books. So just
Oh,
as a
you were in
little
hog
side note,
heaven.
yeah, and she's been a huge supporter. We've been friends. We met living in Sicily, so we've been friends for many years. But two really inspirational episodes to me where my first one was Cynthia Newberry Martin, and she was episode 29. And what stood out so much to me about her episode, wow, how many times am I going to cry on here? Was she was
You didn't know when you started this that you were going to get all weepy,
yeah,
did you?
she was a lawyer. She was extremely successful and had a professional life, and she decided to, man, this is crazy, stay at home with her four children. And what stood out to me, and that I'm sorry, here we go, crying again. If you know anything about me in real life, you know that I tear up a lot. My kids make fun of me that I cry every movie. And so what touched me about that was I was a physical therapist. And if I may say so, I was successful. I had a good job. And I never saw myself being a stay-at-home mom. But God had other plans for me, and here I am. And I have struggled, if anything, maybe with a bit of shame sometimes that I'm not using the degree that I paid all of this money for. And I think sometimes moms, stay-at-home moms, are frowned upon in our society. And wow, this is going to come across as like I'm crying the whole time. But having a podcast and having something of my own has been really redeeming for me in that, like finding something of another way to use this mental work. But what Cynthia showed me was it was okay to be at home with my kids and that be enough. Like, I don't need anything else. She's an author now and she's published a few books, and I can come back and I can still be a thriving member in society. But right now, my kids and my family need me, and I can be okay with that decision. And I have struggled with that identity for 5 years.
You're already thriving. You don't have to be a thriving member of society. Every woman who stays home with their kids, works, whatever it is, you got to do what works for you. It's nobody else's business, and you are doing what you love. You are changing the world every day. You impact it. But even if you did, like, being you is absolutely enough.
Yeah.
You don't need to prove to anyone anything. You are a sunshiny, wonderful, giving, fabulous person. And that has nothing to do with you being a physical therapist. It actually has nothing to do with you even being a mother. That's just who you are. And that is enough. Being a fantastic mom is the cherry on top. Having a podcast, well, that's just sprinkles. But, you're a solid cone, baby. And we all love ice cream.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that it just really made me explore, like, we are so much more than these labels that we put on ourselves. We do
Oh,
it and
yes.
others do it.
Mhm.
And I am so much more than that. And so I get really frustrated sometimes when I feel like we get put in boxes of these labels because, exactly to your point, we are so much more than that label that someone else put on us or I put on myself. And so, when I die, it's not going to be like, okay, she was a great PT and that's it. That's not going to be my legacy, quote unquote. And so I take some peace in that a little bit. And I think you and I might have talked about this quote. One of my favorite quotes is Mother Teresa, and it's, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And that has really helped drive my decision. And my legacy is going to be my kids in this world.
And it's a beautiful legacy. I mean, I think of my grandmothers. They were stay-at-home women. They never even learned how to drive, but I never thought they were anything less than wonderful.
Yeah.
Like I don't look back and think, well, goodness, they could have been more if they had done this thing. And like, no, they were good people. Like,
Yeah.
and it's honestly, most of it's us.
True.
It's absolutely us. Like when I left teaching, I had, oh my gosh, I had a degree. I worked for my teaching certificate. I have a master's in teaching. And then I left. And I'm like, I have spent so much time and energy on this career. And I had an identity crisis when I left, which I'm pretty sure you did when you left PT,
Yeah.
because you're like, I was this thing. Now I had to figure out who I was
Yeah.
without it. And there's well, I've wasted all this time, or that it was just ridiculous. And I'm like, no, no, whoever you are is enough. And then I've started the podcast. Then I'm working on writing all of this stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's good. It gives me a focus, but I'm way more than that.
Yeah. Who knew we were going to be so motivational this
I
morning? But
know.
hey, you know what? Moral of this story is don't be so hard on yourself, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Amen to that.
So, and I said I had two inspirational episodes, and I have one other one. It was Kathy Izzard, episode 37. She is doing amazing things. She also decided to stay at home with her kids. And then after her kids were grown up, she decided to go out. She got this nudge. She was working in soup kitchens and got this nudge that homeless people need homes. And so she has raised over $75 million for the city of Charlotte to build homes for the homeless. And so she was super inspirational in just that story alone, but just like what you could do if you finally listened to like these little whispers or these nudges that you're getting, and how you could scale it to this massive thing that she's doing. So, doing good in the
Wow.
world. So, she was also incredibly inspirational from episode 37.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like she's doing her good in the world, yours and mine combined. I mean, like,
Yeah.
wow. That's very impressive. Okay, Ashley's last question. Of all your interviews, which one would you recommend to a new listener? This is what I always think about because I would always tell them to never ever listen to my first episode because I really didn't know what I was doing. But it's like if somebody's new, if they've just kind of joined or going to join, um, which episode would you say start here?
Yeah, see, I had a hard time with this. I'm like, I don't even know where to tell you to start. My recommendation that I'm coming with this morning, though, is if you head over to www.bookishflights.com, there is a tab at the top that says flights. And you can go and you can look under fiction flights, nonfiction flights, or are you looking for children's book recommendations? And I would say that you can go pick any of your fancy, that whether you're looking for nonfiction recommendations or fiction or children's, and go pick one and you will get many book recommendations per genre, which if you're anything like me, you're a bit of a mood reader. So I don't know that I could tell you an episode to start with because you're probably in the mood for a certain book. And so go find one based off what you're I don't know. I've really struggled with picking
Oh,
one
I love that
episode.
because you're right. Your flights are they're all, well, it's a flight, so it's thematic.
Yes.
So, it makes sense for them to come in and find a theme that either they read and they love it and find new ones, or get adventurous like you did and try something new that sounds interesting to them. So, yeah, you make it really simple for people to be like, oh, I'm looking for kids ones. So they can go and listen to all the kids ones,
Yeah.
or, the just whatever theme catches their fancy. So
Yeah. Because
that's a nice
I
piece of
don't
your.
know how to categorize. One would be like, I mean, there's a trailer that's like 3 minutes long that's going to tell you about the show. But other than that, I would say, and I really, most episodes are titled by what type of books you're going to get. So the theme of the book flight is what I try to title the episode. So that way you're kind of going to know what you're going to get from book recommendations. So you could go that way.
You are so orderly. I'm so impressed. I want you to come over and organize my life
Well, I was gonna say you
because
should come to my house and just like try a day with us because my personal life is not the same.
now we are all a product of our environment. You know, we know it takes a village to even create who we are. Who had the most positive influence on you?
As far as podcasting,
You can take that any way you want. It could be podcasting, it could just be in your life. Who would you say has had the most positive influence on you?
I mean, simply I have to go with my mom. She has always believed in me, and no matter what, and she's always good at being impartial and let me try things, even knowing she probably in her wisdom knows I'm going to fail at some things, which is okay to fail. I'm not saying that as a bad thing,
No.
but she has always believed in me and let me try things. And I'm sure she didn't want to watch me fail, but you kind of have to let your kids learn it on their own. And she did a very good job of that. So I would say my mom.
Oh,
Love you,
mom,
mom.
you just got a big present. You're fabulous, mom. Okay. Our next question, it's kind of with two people because they're asking similar things
Yes.
from Shakira Banos at Shakira Channery, who apparently is like the best photographer in Jacksonville, Florida. She wants to know, when are you writing a book? I love that she has this assumption that you're going to, and she's like, well, when is this finally going to happen?
She is, when you said sunshine, Shakira she is sunshine herself. She's amazing. And she believes in me. She's a friend of mine as well. I love her question. I don't really know how to answer this because I feel like you hear people say, I have a book in me. And to an extent, I feel like maybe I have a book in me as well. But when I sit and brainstorm on this topic, I'm like, do I write kind of a memoir of my life? Do I write like this, not self help? I don't want to say that, but don't do this because I did. And I learned the hard way type book? Or do I write something fiction? Because I read majority of fiction. So I couldn't pinpoint at this stage in my life where I would go with that, nor do I have the time to write a book at this point in my life. But yeah, I have a little nudge that maybe I have a book in me. So much
Well,
later
that kind
down the road.
of you kind of answered Jessica Fowler over at What Your Therapist Is Reading podcast from at Therapy Books podcast. She wanted to know if you are writing a book and then what it would be about.
Yeah.
So,
I literally
um,
wrote, ha, I wish. Um, yeah, just for all the reasons I have already said. But hopefully one day I've told you I've was like pushed towards writing a couple of times since starting this project. So sometimes I'll come down and just putz around on my computer and let some thoughts flow out, but nothing that I would ever at this point dream of putting into a book.
what what kind of voice do you think you have that kind of comes to your mind? Do you think you lean more towards nonfiction and that you'd kind of want to do some sort of how to or just kind of essays or something like that? Or do you have fictional ideas running through your head? Like
Yeah,
for me,
I
ever since I was a kid, I got fiction stories running in there all the time.
Yeah, I think for me, it's nonfiction, which is what I think maybe I push away a little bit because I'm like, well, who would want to listen to what I have to say? But it has been a journey of discovery here that being a military spouse, what that entails, what life is like with that, and a mom, and I've already kind of touched on this, but finding who you are and being able to keep your center amidst whether it's the chaos of motherhood or the chaos of moving all the time with the military, those are two things I've really had to fight very hard for in finding me and finding my center amongst all of that. And so there, I kind of lean into that of maybe I could be a help to someone else that's going through it or feeling lost like I was.
I think you've got your answer because you are passionate about the topic. You have intimate knowledge, like you are an expert in that field, so you can talk to it. And um, I'm not a military wife, but I'm like, huh, that would be interesting to read. It would be interesting to go into that person's shoes and learn what their life is like.
Yeah. And
And
I
I
don't want people to feel like I felt, right? And some of the loneliness of that and some of the negative emotions that come with certain things. And I don't want people to have to feel that. And so I do feel this nudge to be like, maybe I could help in some way or in some capacity for someone else.
okay, since we're talking about books, here's the next book question. And
Hmm.
I think this one's going to be really hard for you, or maybe really easy. If you did write that book, if you did write a book, who would you dedicate it to?
Simply, I guess I would have to say my family.
I thought that's who you'd pick, but I'm like, maybe she'll surprise me. But I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be your family. But
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure.
Well, and I guess if it was something with military life, I have an amazing group of friends that I have met in this journey. And so I would have to give a shout out to my military gals, military spouses. There are some active duty as well, but just they've made this journey beautiful through this life.
Thank goodness for acknowledgments in the back of the book.
Yeah, that's where I would like have, I'm like very simply in the front family. The like rest would probably be, 10 paragraphs on all of the individual people.
The next question comes from Alexis, who keeps your hair looking fabulous. And it is, I have all the hair envy. She's over at Alexis the Stylist 888, and she wants to know what would the 100th episode you tell episode one you? I thought this was a fabulous question.
This was good, and I have already said it on the show, so you can tell it is my mantra, but better done than perfect. And I can always go back, I can always change things, I can always edit. Everything is not as final as you think. I mean, except the audio maybe that goes out. Everything else I can tweak and fix to my liking or change for the next time. So better done than perfect.
It is seriously good advice. I love it. All right. Here's another off from left field kind of question. What is your family's most memorable tradition?
Oh, that is a great question. So, my childhood, right, which I think is different than adulthood because now I don't live near my family, right? But I every Christmas Eve we would go to my aunt's house and we would go to church and then we would go for dinner afterwards and they had this giant motorhome. Like I don't know the classes of motorhomes, but it's the biggest one that you can get. And we would all pile in their motorhome after dinner and we would go drive to like the rich neighborhoods and we would look at all of the Christmas lights and the Christmas displays and all our family would be piled in this motorhome to go see Christmas lights and it is one of my favorite memories of childhood.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm so big on looking at Christmas lights. They make you so happy. And to have your whole family in the same car. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, and I think as an adult, right, this has changed and now I have my own kids, so I'm trying to figure out traditions. I don't know that I would call this a tradition, but it is something that we have done together as a family for many years. My husband and I both are originally from Chicago. And so we're fairly snobby about our pizza, if I must say. And
That's fair. That's fair. I love Chicago style pizza.
we have lived for 14 years outside of Chicago. We've been moving around in this lifestyle and we have lived in Sicily. So outside of a 3-year stint in Sicily, we've never lived somewhere that has had fantastic pizza that we could just call in and pick up. And so for 14 years, I've been perfecting my pizza dough recipe. Thank you to my father in law, who is an amazing cook. And so I have been trying to perfect Jim's pizza dough recipe. I have literally, like, I have a signed copy of his recipe that goes around in my cookbook with me. And I have been trying to recreate this pizza dough recipe for 14 years. Jim, I still don't think I've quite got your dough recipe, but it has become a tradition with my kids that, like, they all just pile in and we make pizza together. And so whenever I make the dough,
Aw.
it's an easy meal, right? But it's they come in, they add the sauce and they add the toppings and they add the cheese and they love doing it. And so everybody like scrambles in with their stools and that kind of has just become, I think, something that we all do together. There's not many other meals. I include my kids. I wish I did. I try, but it's, it takes 7 times longer with 3 kids to do something. So pizza's a really easy meal that I can just like roll out the dough and then they can actually assist me and we still get things out in a timely fashion.
Oh, I love that. That's so sweet. I'm sure they will have very fond memories of making pizza together.
Yeah.
That's nice that you guys like have the family recipe.
Yeah. And it's still, I mean, I don't know how many years it's going to take me to like master Jim's recipe, but we'll see. 14 years and counting.
It's just about the time that they start asking you for the recipe. Like
Yeah.
that's about when you'll get it. And
Yep.
then don't tell them that it's going to take them like 2 decades to master it. Like,
Yeah. It's like the
because
ratio
the,
of the olive oil and the salt. Like, I just can't quite get that. And you know how like the great chefs are, they don't measure anything. So they can't tell you how they do it.
that's why I'm not a great chef. But I want to come over for pizza now. That
Yeah.
sounds excellent.
When you come, it'll be here.
Okay. On episode 98, you talked to Eli Gardner at Abracadabra Inc., which also on our book story share, I had a reader who talked about the impact of Eli's hookah smoke and hellfire. And oh my gosh, like I was so touched about what she said and what was in it was just it's fabulous. It's an amazing book. Um, Eli wants to know, what are you most proud of in this podcast journey?
I wrote very simple things for this: doing it, sticking with it, making something. And her and I talked about this in episode 98, that something we loved in childhood. So, right, for me, it was books. For her, it was horses. But taking something that I loved in childhood and making something with it.
Nice. That's sweet. That I am very impressed that you are making it to episode 100. I mean, most podcasts don't. They will have quit because I think a lot of them are similar to me as and you in a bit too. We're clueless about what this was
Don't
going
tell
to
our
entail.
secrets.
And you know, it is challenging. And I get why people are like, oh, okay, I'm gonna quit. And you know, building an audience takes forever. And you've been doing a great job with that, and your listeners love you, and they should. And it's something you want to commit to see it through for a while. And so you should be very proud of hitting 100.
I am. Even before we got on this, I was thinking as I was getting ready this morning of like, pinch me. I'm kind of tearing up again. Pinch me. I promise I'm not a sappy mess just walking around in the daily life. But again, it's just when things touch my heart so much that it just strikes this emotion in me.
Never apologize when you cry, ever. That is one of the most charming, sweet things about you is your big heart. Don't ever apologize for
Okay.
that. We need
All right.
more people. You wear it proudly. This brings us to my last question,
Okay.
and I'm so excited to bring it up. You are launching something called the BFF Club, and Tell us all about it.
Yes. The other thing about me is I love making community. And I think it's something that I think if we truly look at ourselves, we can figure out what our strengths are, right? And weaknesses too, right? We see it all. But something that I think I am very good at in this moving lifestyle is bringing groups of people together and community. And community is what helps me feel grounded to a place when we move. And I always tell my husband, don't ask me if I like a place until we've been there for more than 6 months because I won't have a friend before then. And so I'm going to tell you I don't like it. Whether it's Hawaii or Sicily or somewhere beautiful, I'm still going to be like, nope, I don't like it because I don't have a community. And that is what helps me feel grounded to a place. So, long story short, you've talked about how podcasting can be an uphill battle. And for me, one of the goals I've always had with this is how can I bring these people that love books hang out with me with podcasting, right? They listen to the show, but how can I bring us together in a way that seems meaningful? And I know our time is precious, so I don't want to ask a lot out of you for your time. And so the BFF Book Club is here. So Bookish Flights friends, this is for you. And what this is going to look like is every month right? We're going to kind of get a little break around the holidays but I'll have announcements for all these things, but we are going to read a book together. And in true Bookish Flights fashion, it's going to be a wide variety of genres. We're going to read a book together. We're going to meet together on a Zoom call towards the end of the month. I'm going to leave that very loose to see how scheduling and planning goes. And the author is going to join us on that call. So what's going to happen on this call is you're going to get to attend a mini interview, a mini Bookish Flights interview. So you get to see it in action. But then I'm going to reserve half of the time slot for you to be able to interact with the author as well. So it's going to be this virtual author meet and greet. You're going to meet with other book lovers on this call. And I'm really hoping that this can be a piece that kind of brings us together in this community format and feels like it gives you a bit of an experience to Bookish Flights versus just like listening to me in your earbuds once a week, but something that you can truly interact with.
Yay! I'm so excited. And because I have a sneak peek on who one of your authors is, I cannot wait. I'm so excited for
Yeah.
the interview.
Jacqui
And
introduced me to, so I can tell because I think at this
okay,
point it's going to be published too. So our first meeting, oh, and here's the other thing. So don't panic if you can't attend the meeting and don't think, oh, I can't read that month's book because these are going to be recorded and they're going to be sent to your inbox and published as a podcast episode. So even if you can't attend the book club meeting, do not worry about that because again, you'll be able to hear the recorded version after the fact. So first month it's September 29th. It's going to be at 4 p.m. We have Darkness Calls the Tiger by Janir Trump. And it is a World War II historical fiction. I had to throw out my favorite genre to get us started, but it's actually set in Burma. So the market is saturated, I think, sometimes. And this is where I say, like, okay, I have to kind of pull myself out of World War II historical fiction sometimes because there are so many out there. Love them. They are all fabulous, but I do have to take a break from them sometimes. But this one is actually set in Burma. So you're going to get a very different perspective than what I think the masses in Europe, right? Set in Europe. So
right.
it's going to bring a different perspective to this World War II historical fiction genre, which really ignited my passion for historical fiction. So it feels like fitting that we're starting with this. The October is actually going to be in the first weekend in November is going to be our meeting. Just due to life circumstances, I can't do the last month. It's going to be Hazel Pryor, and Jacqui actually introduced me to this book, and it's How the Penguin Saved Veronica. And I would categorize this as contemporary kind of women's fiction, wouldn't you say, Jacqui?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's that question of women's fiction slash fiction, like that whole debate, which, you know, shouldn't we just all call it fiction? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. So we are going to talk. She actually has her third book in the series is going to be coming out this fall, but this is actually the first book in the series. So if you get a taste of this and you love it, you will have two other books that you could read to continue on in the series with Veronica. So that meeting is actually going to be on November 2nd, and that's going to be at 11:30 in the morning. Hazel lives in the UK, so we have to do it a little bit early so she doesn't have to meet with us in the middle of the night. So we are doing that one a bit earlier on a Saturday. And then our last book I'm super excited about because I wanted to do a rom-com. I know this genre is incredibly popular. It is a genre that I admittedly don't read a ton of, although I have been loving every minute. I read a ton of them this summer because I really was screening them because I'm imagining my mom and my aunt coming and I didn't want a super spicy read to be the book that I'm recommending they read. And so I was looking for a more like, we could slap a bunch of terms on it, right? Kind of closed door, clean romance. I mean, the most you're going to get is kissing in this novel. So I've already read it and I've already screened it. So I know it's going to be perfect, but it's also a Christmas rom-com because our meeting is going to be in December. And so I wanted to
Yay!
do something for the holidays. So it's called Faking Christmas and it's by Cindy Steele. And our meeting is going to be on Sunday, December 8th, and that's going to be at 1:30. So all of this will be published on the website. I actually have a email link that you can sign up for so you can get notifications. You do need to sign up for the Zoom recording because that's how you're going to get the link to your email with what you need to join the call. But yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be a fantastic new adventure here at Bookish Flights. Literary adventure, let's say that.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. And oh no, I have to read the first Veronica book again. The Torture. It is such
Yeah.
a feel-good book. I love it so much. Oh,
Yay. Well, and so one other thing is come ready with your questions because, like I said, half of the episode is going to be reserved for conversation with, whether it's Hazel or whether it's Cindy, with the author, you're going to have time to ask questions. It can be about the book. It can be about whatever you want to ask them, writing process. I mean, they know that they're coming on to have a live Q&A session with the BFF book club members. So
here's a weird question. I don't think I could ask it, but I'd be interested to know is do they really love doing these question and answer lives, or is it something like they're sweating profusely behind the Zoom camera and get nervous? Because so many authors are introverted.
yeah.
And so talking to a group, I can imagine a bunch of them getting like really, really nervous. And then others are like, oh my God, let me at them.
Yeah, I could see it going both ways, right? Of like, I'm so excited to talk to people who love my book, right? That has to be a good, like just a feel good moment for you to
Right.
have this group of people show up that are like your super fans. They loved your book and they want to be here and they want to talk to you about it. But I totally see the other side of it, right? Of the nerves, because even I got nervous this morning a little bit of like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not interviewing someone else. I have to be on and ready to answer questions. But this has been great.
I know it is so different depending on which side of the microphone you're on,
Yeah.
you know, that I'm really glad I'm interviewing you. That when you come to interview me, that's gonna be a lot harder.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, it's just totally different in how you prepare.
Well, this has been so much fun. I've enjoyed doing this. Thank you for being on your own show and letting me be the one to interview you. This has just been an absolute blast.
Yeah, and thank you so much for interviewing me. And again, listeners, make sure you head over to Jacqui Just Chatters. I'll have links in the show notes for that. But it's a fantastic, whimsical, feel good storytelling podcast. And so you don't want to miss it. We also are both nominated for Women in Podcasting Awards. And so, listeners, if you wouldn't mind to maybe head over to the Women in Podcasting link in the show notes, and you could vote for both of our shows. I'm in the author and books category, and you are in the storytelling
The
category?
storyteller. Yep.
Storyteller category. So if you could, just a shameless plug, if you could go vote for us at the Women in Podcasting Awards, the voting
Go
is
vote
open.
for Bookish Flights. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
But also, Thank you to the listeners that have made, I'm gonna tear up again, this journey
Oh.
possible. I couldn't do this without you tuning in, without you sharing what you love, without you at all. So thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with my friend and hostess extraordinaire, Jacqui Lents, over at Jacqui Just Chatters. Make sure you head over to her podcast to check it out. And thank you so much for tuning in to episode 100. Here's to many more. Today, we have a special book flight from our sponsors for the fans of historical fiction with a rich aroma of danger, a sweet hint of romance, and a bold undertone of friendship and women in science. We think you'll love the Treasures of the Earth series by Kimberly Woodhouse. You can also savor these stories with an exclusive 30% off and free shipping when you order from bakerbookhouse.com. Ready for the taste test? Let's go. In Book 1, The Secrets Beneath, Anna Lakeman has spent her life working alongside her paleontologist father. When they find dinosaur bones, a rich investor tries to take over their dig. As Anna fights for recognition of her work and reconnects with an old beau, tensions mount and secrets are unburied. How can they keep the perils of the past from threatening their renewed affection? Set in Stone, Book 2 in the series spotlights Martha Jankowski, who discovers an intact dinosaur skeleton and has the opportunity to make a name for herself, but only if she can uncover the full skeleton before another competing dig. As she races against the clock, she meets a man who shares her passion for science and faith. But is he friend or foe? Finally, in the last book, A Hope Unburied, Eliza Mills' paleontology career has led her to the Dinosaur National Monument. When she gets the chance to dig up bones at a ranch with a dark history, it sparks a chain of events that will rock her carefully constructed world. She and her friend Devin find themselves entangled in a web of danger, and he must rescue Eliza from those who want her to fail. Make sure to check out the links in the show notes to see more about these books. Thank you so much to our sponsor, Bethany House. Thank you so much to Jacqui Lents. And thank you so much, listeners. Let's end our show, as we always do, with a quote by Emma Thompson. I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time. Hey listeners, Bookish Flights has been nominated for the Women in Podcasting Awards in the Authors and Books category. If you could head over to www.womenpodcasters.com/vote and vote for Bookish Flights in the Author and Books category, I would greatly appreciate it. Your vote would go a long way in helping the podcast gain visibility and spread our love for books and reading. Head to the show notes to get a direct link to vote. Thank you.